All right. Little length of time to get it stabilized. Bring some essentials closer because we're going to need them. Let's see. I'm also going to have to bring. Ooh, don't do that. There we go. Gotta have a guitar with you. I have no idea who's with me yet because I can't see anything, but I will in a moment. I'll see all your wonderful, smiling chat names. Let me pull this up on the laptop here because that's always a good idea. All right, today. Let's see. Hopefully, I don't get a phone call while I'm streaming this morning. That happens to me from time to time. Now, let's see here. Nope, don't need that. Nope, don't need that. Don't need that. Don't need that. I do need that. There we go. Good old YouTube. Let's get it rocking. And I'm live. How about that? Hey, it's my face. Let me turn the volume down. Hey, there's people. Rock on. That's what's up. All right, so you can all see me. Good morning. Yeah, I should talk about this a little bit. Good morning, Andrew. Good morning, Dom. Good morning, Kikia. Good morning. Let's see. What's that, Andrew? Good morning, you guys. Glad you're all here, and I appreciate that a lot. Let's see. Yeah, the image is a little fuzzy, but in the playback it'll be better. Give me a 1 or a thumbs up if you can hear me well. If the audio sounds decent from that far away. I figure it probably does. But your feedback is always useful. Oh, here we go. Nice. Oh, okay, right on. What's a telecon? I'm not familiar with that. Uh-oh, Dom said 2. And then he says 1. You're cracking me up, man. As per usual. Per usual. Still got a little bit left of this. This was some of the fruits of a little gift from Bisky. She hooked us up yesterday. If you haven't seen yet, Big Drum Bear is up on Instagram, and we're rocking it there. So feel free to go check out Instagram. There's a link in the description. You can go follow there. And Facebook. I'm not doing as much of the Facebook yet, but I'm going to. Trying to figure out different ways to use these because I don't want them to just be clones of one another. You know, I want Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all to serve unique purposes for the channel and make it more interactive, make it more interesting and fun. And it's just more ways for you guys to reach out and connect with me and vice versa. So I dig that. But yeah, Bisky hooked us up with a little PayPal love yesterday, and she said, go and get some frothy beverages. She probably was suggesting beer, you know, or something along those lines, but it was 99-cent coffee, iced coffee, any size, from 2 to 6 p.m. at Dunkin' Donuts. So iced coffee for both me and my wife. And as you can see, I got mine no cream sugar because no carb. And yeah, still going strong, no carb. In fact, where'd it go? Where'd it go? It's right here. There's eggs right next to me. Yeah, got a little, it's a little burnt, but it's still good. Egg action going on here. Just a little bit of salt put into it, but not much. And so I might have to, uh-oh, what's going on? Someone's trying to call me. Why are they doing that? No, they're not. Good. Dom with the links like crazy. You know what? I'm more and more of the opinion that Facebook is of old lady nature. You know, I think that's likely to be true. Kika, I encourage you in that. You know, by the way, I have a, I was going to take a bite of my food, but instead I have a guest who dropped in. Come here, baby. Oh, I got you. Look who just wandered under my drums. This puppy hasn't been on so much yet, but I've had Chunk and Gita on plenty. So Gerby had to pop into the stream because she loved her dad. Yeah, she's our first puppy out of that bunch. Previously, my wife had. It's okay, I got you, babe. You don't like being teeter-tottering, huh? You just want my food. You're just wanting my food. That's all it is. Faking this love stuff. She's a hoot. All right. Gerby decided to play the drums. You're not getting my food. It's not going to happen. That's my breakfast. You need to eat your doggy food. Yes. She's either looking for my food or she's looking for a chipmunk that our kitten managed to drag in from outside. And that's a blast, let me tell you. Oh, I mean that as sarcastically as I possibly could. It is no fun to find remains of critters in your home that have been left there by a cat. At any rate, so I was eating my food. I had to stop and talk about Gerby because she's kind of awesome. We had 2 dogs previously, my wife did. One, his name was Bear, right? Totally appropriate. He was a Corgi Chow Chow mix. And he was just this, he had this like Rottweiler sort of colors, but he was this big, thick Chow Chow dog. But it was more streamlined. It wasn't quite as poofy sort of Chow Chow, just in the tail. Wonderful dog. She had him trained as a therapy dog, and he went around to do work with people who struggled with autism and other developmental disabilities and things like that. He also went to do some of the read to the dog programs and things like that, where kids would get to sit down, and they would actually get to read to a dog. Excuse me. I had this problem yesterday, not during the stream, but later. They get to read to a dog to build confidence in their reading abilities. No, she's not a lawyer like Goliath. It's Claire. No. She's just Gerbear. That's what I was getting to here. Won't let me add you, so you will have to add me. Aha! Yeah, I'll probably do that when I have. You know what? I'm gonna do it right now, Dawn. I'm gonna pull up my FB right now. But I'm going to finish the story before I forget, because I'm really good at forgetting what stories I was talking about. I watched back on the streams to try and see some of the chats that I might have missed and things like that. And very often, I know it's a shocker, I get sidetracked and I miss things. I start talking about something and then I forget what I was talking about. But at any rate, I'm working on doing that right now, so I'm going to not do that. And I'm going to say we had Bear, but we also had another dog that was kind of a Corgi mix, but I think she was a mix of a whole bunch of other things. Her name was Lucky, and my wife had gotten her from a rescue, and Lucky was about 2 or 3 at the time, and she'd been found with a pack running wild, out on the streets, sleeping rough, as the Brits would say. We've been watching some British murder mysteries. My wife loves those, and I think they're kind of fun once in a while myself. And they like to say sleeping rough, and someone's been sleeping outdoors. But let's see here. So Bear she got when he was like 10 months old, and Lucky was almost over 3, and she'd been on the street, that kind of thing. Bear hadn't experienced any of that, but. Bear passed away back in 2014, and he had some form of autoimmune issue that popped out of nowhere. Like one day he was full of strength, full of energy, and then my kids are over, they're playing outside in the yard, and we suddenly noticed, wow, he has this major drop in energy. We lived in this apartment, it was like a single building, but the upstairs of that building, I think the building used to be like a dry cleaners in the area where we lived, and then the upstairs was like a 3-bedroom apartment, so you had to walk up a flight of stairs to get there. But he normally would take it like 5 to 6 stairs at a time and be up the whole thing in like 3 seconds. Today he was literally, that day he was just 1 step at a time, super slow. and we were concerned. So the next day we take him to the vet. He's bleeding internally. We don't know what's going on. And then we had to take him to Champaign to the veterinary hospital. And they were like, yeah, it's like his blood is losing its cohesion and won't stay in his organs properly. So it's leaking out. 3 blood transfusions inside of a week to try and get him to survive. And I think finally on the last one we thought maybe he's going to make it. But he went into cardiac arrest like Friday night of that week. It's like Monday we started to see the symptoms. Friday he's gone into cardiac arrest late at night, and they tried to revive him. And that poor doctor, she was so sweet. She said she'd been up like many 24-hour days, or sometimes maybe 20 or plus, trying to work on Bear and doing what she could. She probably went out for 20 plus minutes trying to revive him, and she was calling my wife in tears, beautiful Lady Bear. She was calling her in tears, saying, do you want us to keep trying? Do you want us to keep working? She said, no, let him go. It's all right. Man, I started with the sad, just puppy story. This is awful. I was letting you in here, Dawn. You're supposed to be like coming in to my thing. Dom Tough wants to connect with you. Oh, on Messenger, eh? Is that what it is? All right. Well, I'm going to accept you now, so haha, you're in there. It should be good now, Dom. Let me get back to the chat so I can see what people are saying. Yeah. I know, like it's ridiculous. But follow me through, because this is going somewhere. Hang on, Censor Christian. Thanks for joining in. Oh no, am I circle of death here? Oh, okay. Were you guys still getting me? Because on my computer it was looking funky doo. Was I gone for a minute? Or is everything good? I was talking sad puppy story, and then I'm trying to let Dom into on Messenger. Just making sure you guys were still seeing me correctly. Stream good? Everything up? Video paused, but I refreshed. Okay, great, cool. So, you're good, Dom, man. Hey, Steve. My condolences, I guess, for the teasing you were getting last night, because it was just plain funny, sir. We were all enjoying seeing you talking, but not to us, and it was muted. That was kind of funny in the Hangouts. But yeah, it's all in love, all in good bear love and fun. So that was funny. You're right. Tom losing another wrench. Oh my gosh. Nice. Okay, that was for Pender. So at any rate, finish this puppy story, because it gets a little bad, but then it gets better. So yeah, he passed, and we had to drive down to Champaign. It was like 10:30 at night when we got the call. So we drive down from Sunnyland, where we were living, down to Champaign, and we have to go see him and just say our goodbyes, and then sign the paperwork, to release his body and all that stuff, and they had him cremated, and we actually have a little box that's got his remains sitting up on the little. I don't know if you call it a shrine, but have a little spot in the living room that we prepared for just memory of those two. A couple of years later, lucky we had to put her down. It was just before we moved into this house. And she was 16 years old at that point, and she was like having days of not eating, and she was definitely going downhill. She was near blind at that point. I had pretty bad cataracts, is what we had thought. But yeah, having a rough time. So those two, had been the previous pack with Dawn, and they became my dogs a lot too over the early days of our relationship. But it was after Bear passed, maybe 2-3 months. Dawn's dogological clock was ticking, and so we started looking, and of course here comes good old Gerby joining the group. About a year later, year and a half almost, we ended up getting, computer, shh, it keeps knocking me off this, and that's frustrating. Am I still here? Good, I'm still here. Kika. Well, I hope there's somebody to help you with that, Kika. Let's see. What am I thinking now? That got me out. That was a good squirrel, by the way. So we got the new puppy was Gerby, right? And then a little over a year later, Dawn wanted to have another dog in the mix there, and this was not too. What I'm trying to think if we had Lucky yet or not, and I think we did. We had Lucky at the time, but Gita and Lucky lived together for a very short time, I believe. I could be totally wrong about that, but for some reason I'm pretty sure that was the case. Yeah, it wasn't long before we had Lucky put down that we got little puppy Gita. So we had 3 at one time, and that was pretty insane. So we're doing great for quite a while, right? All through most of 2016. We've only got the 2 dogs, and I'm more than happy to have that. Suddenly, about June, it was more like February, March of 2017, Dawn's dogological clock is ticking again. I don't know why I do this, but it's funny. So she'd been looking at puppies online, seen a whole bunch of different ones out there. It's like, oh, but this one, how about this one, how about this one? I'm like, dear Lord in heaven, 2 is great, 2 is wonderful. I'm happy in this house with 2. And then one day I'm out with the kids, my kids, going to a park. And we were up a little further north in like Henry, Illinois, hanging out there. And I get this text from her, I found this dog, and this family near Henry, Illinois owns it. They'll come and meet you at the general store there, the gas station, if you want to check it out. No pressure, By the way, so I put some extra money from savings into the account in case you want to go ahead and purchase them from them. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to not purchase this dog. It's just not going to work. I guarantee it. I've got 4 children who are going to fall in love with a puppy, and then I'm going to be emotionally attached to it in moments as well, as much as I try otherwise. And now there's money to buy it, ready to go, set aside for that. This is a bad recipe for me. I'm about to have 3 dogs. And not only am I about to have 3 dogs, but I'm about to get a big, giant, mastiff Rottweiler mix. Dear Lord, save us from ourselves. My Grandpa Art's quote becomes more relevant every day. So yeah, we now have 3. And so it's the new pack, essentially. And that's the little short history of them. But I thought that would be fun. My wife basically manipulated me into getting a 3rd dog. And I remind her of that regularly. But I also tell her that she's a beautiful lady, which balances that out. So, I totally did get played. My Cousin Vinny is the best movie. I haven't seen that in years. And I know that relates to what we were talking about somehow, but I missed it. Fair play's dying. I have 4. I'm good. My clock is done. Okay. All right. That. You know what? I remember that now. It's been a little bit, but that is a good film. One moment. I need a bite. Mm-hmm. It's getting a little cold, but it's good. Cold brewed coffee. Oh, it's just cold coffee. Just nice coffee. It's still good. At any rate, music theory. Back at it. I hope you're in here, man. Geek, you've got the video file up with the reference. That you guys are awesome, man. I'm gonna have to start watching people's streams from my laptop when I can. I usually catch you guys from the phone because I'm on the go often. But at any rate, all right, so yesterday we covered a couple of things, right? We covered, I'm going to close this for a moment. This is just my hi-hat, snare drum, and actually not my ride cymbal, but one of my favorites that I'm borrowing from my good buddy Scott. And of course I got my bass drum hanging out here. You can't really see that in the shot, but it's there, trust me. So we talked about the major scale. We've gone through that, right? And that was the whole half, whole half. That's the whole step, half step pattern to create a major scale. And you can do it anywhere. You can start from any note. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, or D, E, F sharp, G. No, excuse me, I'm going to play it wrong. D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. Or I could start on E, E, F sharp, G, no, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. It's the same pattern the whole time. I'm just starting on a different note. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. Go to G, A, B, C, no, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. There's your G, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A. And then B, no, yeah. Yeah, I gotta go up here. B, yep, C, no, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B. And then back to C, here we are, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So there's your major scale pattern. It works all the way up, all the way down. And I only played like 7 of the major scales. There's like 15 that we commonly use in Western music. There's these in-between ones, like you could start on, I'm not gonna do them all, but for example, here was the C, right? Using that root note starting, and then a whole step, half step, whole step, half step, and that's how you create that major scale. It's the fundamental basis for pretty much all of Western music, that scale. But then there's the in-between ones like C sharp. I could go up just a half step starting. Right, instead of C, I'm going C sharp. These facial contortion things, I'm aware of it to a degree, but it's just more comedy for you. That's all I can tell you. Same pattern, but I started on C sharp or D flat. It's the same note, but called 2 different names. And that happens sometimes. That whole scale is going to have a set of different names, the C sharp major and the D flat major scale. It's what we call, sometimes it's a big musical, intellectual word, an enharmonic scale, right? 2 enharmonic scales. Same notes on an instrument, but different names. And that happens because some instruments are somewhat designed and through common practice have more of they're more accustomed, the players of those instruments are more accustomed because of the design of the instrument and because of what's common practice in writing for their instrument, to read music in one scale over another. So if you're writing something for a major symphony in say D flat major, maybe you'll write it for the violin in C sharp major. Maybe they're more accustomed that way. And I don't know if that example is necessarily accurate, but that would just be an imaginary example of how that could work. Some instruments are designed to be played, they're designed in a different key, right? So they're going to call certain notes by different names. Like in this instrument, what I call C, right? And a clarinet, that's going to be B flat, right? They're going to call this note B flat, right? There's a whole weird science behind that. I'm not going to get into it, but essentially it just has to do with the way the instrument is designed and the way that they tend, through common practice of writing and arranging music, to read notes, right? So when they see that, when they see how would I say this? Yeah, when they see this or they hear this pitch, they know that as B flat, right? It's also known as concert B flat. There's a few different instruments that have this as B flat, right? Just happens. But there's a lot of instruments that also have that as C, right? Now, when you play this, right, the French horn, we call it F, right? There's disagreements on this. How would I say? It's like the instruments are not always in agreement on what to call a certain pitch, but they all work together, right? They all have their different languages, their different approaches to reading and understanding music, yet they all can work together to do it. I have primarily leaned toward drums, but I've also played clarinet, baritone saxophone, trumpet, drums, and tuba, right? And a whole bunch of other percussion instruments within the percussion family. Marimba, xylophone, they all work in the same way the piano does. So a clarinet is, when you play a C on another instrument, that's a B flat on a clarinet, as an example. So they don't always agree, but it all comes together. Everybody works together to make it happen, right? They know that they're all playing music, and that's the common goal, to play music that sounds good together. So at any rate, a little aside about the way scales and tuning and all that kind of stuff works. That's why you can, it's sort of connected to this idea of enharmonic scales, right? I just wanted to cover that, touch that base real quick. So there's 12 sets of notes that you would play on an instrument that would be called major scales, right? 12 patterns of notes that are all the same basic pattern. You just have a different starting pitch, right? But when you'd write that out, you could write that out 15 different ways, because 3 of those 15 are enharmonic. So they're same notes, different naming for them. Anyway, so we talked about the scales. That's just a recap, right? We talked about triads, right? Taking, say, like for example, the C major scale. If you take the first, third, and fifth notes of that scale, C, E, and G, now you have a triad, the major triad, right? Your major chord. But we also mentioned yesterday how you can take one of those notes, right? The third, right, which was E, and lower it a half step. Now you're gonna have a minor triad. Excuse me. Very different sound quality. So you can hear it going back and forth between a major and a minor. Very different feel. So, good morning. Good morning, people that are now here. Mr. Nicktown, I'm seeing in here. There's probably a bunch of y'all. I'm not reading the chat as much. Hey, Homemade's there. I see you. But I will be reading that in a little bit. I'll catch up on the chat once I finish sharing this. So, you can do it from D as well. I have to really stretch to get that, though. There's your D major triad. The first, third, and fifth notes of the scale. So if I play D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. So I just need B, F sharp, D, F sharp, and A. Where's my A? My A's over here. D, F sharp, and A. That gives you your D major triad. Right? Your D major chord or triad. Chord, triad, they're interchangeable. It's sort of, triad just means a 3-note kind of chord, and chord is just a more general term to speak about it, in case you were curious. But I want to make that minor, right? So I'm going to have to go like this. Instead of D, F sharp, and A, now I take that F sharp and lower it a half step, right? I have to keep the same letter name, right, as I did before, but I have to alter that note in some ways to make it quality-wise fit the chord. So now instead of an F sharp, this is going to be an F, right? D, F, and A makes a D minor triad. Oops, I just want those 3 notes. No, those were unneeded notes. I'm knocking. That was an E. No. Right? So you can do that from any starting note and create a major scale. Figure out what the major scale would be starting from that note. Take the first, third, and fifth notes. You've got your major triad, right? Take the first lowered third, taking that third note and lowering it a half step, keeping the same letter name, but giving it a flat or a sharp or a natural, whatever fits, right? The normal state of notes, like say in the C major scale, all the notes are what we would call natural, right? And then when we get to the D major scale, you'll notice I've got that F sharp as the third, and then the 7th note was a C sharp, right? And we do this because we want to keep alphabet order, no doubling of letters and no skipping of letters, right? That's super important, and it helps us keep organized in the way we form these scales. So now to make other triads, we talked about the major and the minor. The minor is the same as the major, except you take the third pitch from that scale that you're building the chord out of and lower it just 1/2 step. Now we're going to do diminished triads, where you take the, let's start with D, where I was at here, the first, third, and the fifth, right? D, F sharp, and A, that's our major triad, but we're going to lower the third. Well, that's going to be a tough reach. It's a long reach. So I lowered the fifth as well. That's your diminished triad. So you've got D, F, and A flat. We have to keep the same letter name for the note, but we lower it a 1/2 step. Now it's going to be A flat, because flat means to go a 1/2 step below the natural. The natural would be A right there, where we have the minor triad, but now we have the diminished. Really hard for me to reach in that way. There's easier ways to get that chord. So that's a diminished triad. It's got a darker, stranger sound to it. And we have another one. We have the augmented triad. That's another one of my favorites. Excuse me. We keep the first, the third from the D major scale in this case, so D, F sharp, and then we want not the A, but we want A sharp. We're going to raise that fifth tone from the scale a 1/2 step above its natural place, right? Above its scale degree place, where it would normally be within the major scale, we're going to raise that fifth pitch a 1/2 step. That's an augmented triad. Very strange sounding, right? Got an eerie, odd feel to it. So you've got these different types of chords. You've got the major. Let me get that major. D, F sharp, and A, or the first, third, and fifth from the scale, from that major scale of D major in this case, right? I could do it from any major scale. I'm just using this per example right now. And then we have D, F, and A. D, F, and A. That's our minor triad. We took the F sharp and we lowered it a 1/2 step, right? The normal third scale degree from the D major scale. Now it's down a 1/2 step to just F natural. Right? And we have the diminished, where I'll reach up here and make this A an A flat, which is no easy task. If Harold were here, he'd rock it in about 10 different places on the guitar. There's your D, F, and A flat, and you have a D minor triad, a D diminished triad, excuse me. Now, let's take the original one we did was the D major triad, the D, F sharp, and A, but we'll go D, F sharp, and A sharp. We get our augmented triad. So they're really fun to work with here. It's really fun to try and mess with all of these different types of chords, because you basically now have a greater vocabulary. If there are 15 major scales, right, 15 different major scales that get used in Western music, right, then you've learned 4 chord formulas, how to build 4 different types of chords out of all 15 major scales. What's 15 times 4? I believe that's 60. So now you have a library of 60 chords, right, that you could just know how to make right off the bat. You could, with what you've learned here, you could form any major scale, right, that you need to. Are there more than 15? Technically, yes. Do we use any of the others in modern Western music? No. And if you want to try and write them out, following those rules I talked about, you just take any starting pitch, whatever you can imagine. Like the ones we typically don't use, would be D sharp or E sharp or F flat or G sharp or A sharp or B sharp. We don't usually use any of those scales in modern Western music. If you tried to write out a major scale starting from any one of those notes, you're going to quickly figure out why we don't tend to use them. You're going to end up with a lot of double sharps, a lot of double flats. It's going to get a little hairy. A double sharp or a double flat is to go like two half steps above the normal major scale degree. Well, how would I say that? It would be normal scale degree in this case, but if we root everything back to the C major scale where there's no sharps or flats, that's where all our natural notes are at, then you're going to get a lot of notes that are like, okay, I'm trying to think of a good example. So the key of G sharp, right, I think would work. So G sharp, what would that be in working it out as a major scale? You'd have G sharp, and then whole step up to A sharp. Remember, we have to keep alphabet order, right? And then a whole step up to B sharp. B sharp is actually C, right? It would actually be what we would normally call C, but in this case, we're going to call it B sharp because it fits the order of building scales in this way. So G sharp to A sharp, that's a whole. A sharp to B sharp, that's a whole. Now we have to go a half step to C sharp, right? Half step up would be actually C sharp, and what we would normally call it, C sharp. So then a whole step above that is D sharp, right? And then you have a whole step above that would be E sharp, because we need an E next, but that's normally called F, right? And then a half step, whole step above that would be F sharp, right? No, I'm sorry, it would be F double sharp, because we got to go up another whole step from E sharp, which is in this case really F. Got to go up a whole step to a note that would normally be called G, but now we're going to call it F double sharp, right? And then you're going to have G sharp, right? You're going to go back to G sharp, which is what it would normally be called. So you start getting these double sharp things popping in there. That the note of E sharp would normally be called F. Well, B sharp would normally be called C. E sharp would normally be called F, and F double sharp would normally be called G, right? So the more you have to process that as a musician, reading that on a page, the more you have to translate in your head before it comes out through your hands, right? Or your mouth, in order to properly play those notes. If you're a writer or arranger of music, you want to give people the best opportunity to play a piece right on the first time they read it as much as you can. So it makes little to no sense to write in keys that include more and more like displaced notes like that, or double sharps or double flats or anything like that. It just becomes cumbersome and unnecessary, right? Unless it particularly serves your piece in some way, then they're going to learn it. They're going to have to. But by and large, you want to not do that, right? It's just commonly practiced, as I understand it, to not do that. Possible? Absolutely. Practical? Not so much. So that hopefully that explains a little bit about the psychology of the way music is written. But we've talked about these 4 types of triads. That's where I want to get back to. There's 2 more that I'd like to mention. Oh, nice, man. No, I'm just double checking some chat here real quick. I'm going to have to get back and read through all of this, because you guys have interesting conversations when I go off, as you should, because I do go off. Let's see. Oh, it doesn't tell me here. That's odd. I was wondering how long I've been at this, but I should be able to just go like, there. Okay. So about 40 minutes. That's not too bad. I'll go a little bit longer, because a little after 9 I'm going to stop, and my beautiful lady's going to go walk dogs again, and we're going to read the Bible and pray before she goes, because that's an important thing to do. I'm a fan. And if you're not, that's cool too. I love y'all. But yeah, I feel more than happy and excited to share that is something I do. And I gained some valuable stuff out of it, I think. So that's a blues scale, but we won't get into those today. I just wanted to play it because it's fun. Let's see here. The suspended triads. We've got 2 of them, right? So the way we form a suspended triad is to take not the first, third, and fifth pitches like we did with the major triads, but the first, fourth, and fifth. That gives us what we call a suspended or suspended 4, or for short it's called the sus chord, right? Sus, just short for suspended. And you have the sus4 chord. It can normally just be called a sus, because if you just say it's a sus chord or whatever, like in this case I'll do C. C, F, G, or G, there we go, C, F, G, right? That's normally going to be called a C sus chord, right? Excuse me, if you just say C sus, they'll know that you mean sus4, right? But if you're going to do this one and use the first, second, and third, or fifth, I can't even speak right now, the first, second, and fifth notes, as opposed to the first, fourth, and fifth, you're going to get what they call a sus2, or a suspended 2 chord. You can just call it a 2, right? So it'd be like a C2. They'd understand that you mean play the first, second, and fifth notes. Because it has this sound of wanting to gravitate back toward having the third there. No, whoops. There we go, back to the major. Ooh, I won't get into sevenths. I started to play a 7th chord. But that's for another time. So now you have a library of not 60, but 90 chords, right? I just taught you 30 more chords that you can use. The formula for the sus and the sus2, right? The sus4, whatever you want to call it, either way, and the sus2. That formula for chord creation gives you 15 chords for each one, right? Because there's 15 major scales, and you can build that with starting from any major scale starting point, right? Any starting note out of the 15. And use the first, fourth, and fifth scale degrees for a sus4, or the first, second, and fifth scale degrees. Now you have a library of 90 triads, right? You know 15 major scales, all based on one pattern, and you know 90 different chords based on 6 chord formulas, right? It's that easy. It's all it is, right? That's the fundamental basics of creating music. It's all based on there. You create melodies, and you'll have chords that accompany those melodies appropriately. And in future, I'd love to talk more about that in one of these live streams, because it's what I love to do. But now, if you even have just like an inkling of wanting to pick up a musical instrument of some kind, you can now do that, and you can work on figuring out where all your major scales are at and different places to play them, right? I could play C major scale from here, but I could also play it like this. Pretty weird long stretches there. I could come up here. It's hard to play up there. Oh. Ooh. I forgot that's a little different there. Haha. Guitar is not my first instrument. That's no excuse, but it's just the truth. Yeah, I have plenty of other things I can still practice and learn. But just to show you there that you can play the same pattern in multiple different ways all over the neck, because maybe you're playing a solo, maybe you're doing something, you want to use the C major scale, but you're at not up here where I originally showed it, you're way down here. So it's good to know that you have places where you can play that pattern all over the neck. A famous bass guitar player who's well known as being like the father of modern electric bass, a guy by the name of Jaco Pastorius, was famous for playing with a group called Weather Report. He's also pretty famous for playing with an artist named Joni Mitchell. Played with a number of different people. He was a really, really talented guy. Sadly, he died too young. He had a lot of problems with drugs and alcohol. And I understand that he tried to get into some club one night and he was making a ruckus, and there's like, "Don't you know who I am? I'm the greatest bass player in the world." And the bouncer had to take him out, and he was trying to fight with the bouncer, but he was a mess, and I guess the bouncer had to slug him one or two, and in the state he was in, it did a lot more damage than anybody would have guessed. Normal person probably wouldn't have been affected by that, I suspect, but it shocked his system enough that he passed away within the next day or two. Again, I could be misquoting that. I don't know 100% all the detail, but that's what I remember from having read and watched documentaries about that. Jaco Pastorius, you go watch videos of him playing bass guitar, and he's just unreal, unbelievable. And he treated the bass guitar not just like a bass instrument to play the low tones and chords and stuff like that. He played it in such a way as to make it a full musical instrument. He could get percussion out of it, he would get melodies out of it, chords out of it. Just an unbelievable guy, and just got people to look differently at the way that they treated the bass. But he played other instruments before that as well, including drums. So he had a unique mind as to his approach in the instrument. But his dad was a professional touring musician. And before he went away on tour one year, this is what Jaco recounted, said to him, "You want to learn to play the bass? Okay, here's the deal. You're going to learn every note on this fretboard here, right? Where every single note is at. If I say G3 or A5 or whatever it be, and they're numbered, in terms of what octave they're out of, because you start, if you know a piano, right, a piano would start way, way down low notes, and it'd have like octave 1, and you'd have octave 2, 3, and 4, work your way up. So if you pick a note from any of those octaves, you're going to number it based on from low number to the low side of the piano or low end of the guitar to the higher end, right? That's kind of how we enumerate notes, how we classify them. In that way, to differentiate one octave from another. That's what I was trying to say. So he figured that out. He worked on that, and over the space of a year, he was able to do that, immediately know where any note on that fretboard was, instantly, just have that so ingrained. And that foundation, that platform of understanding of his instrument allowed him to have a freedom to play on it. And he was able to go other places with it that some people may never get to in their playing. And so, interesting character, really understood his instrument well. And I was talking with a student of mine yesterday about precision, right? How we, I was thinking back to Dr. Peterson. I referenced Dr. Peterson because it's easy to do. It gets in your head. And I said, Dr. Peterson talks about being precise in your speech. I talk about teaching students in those 4 areas, the areas of mental, physical, spiritual, and relational growth. And we want to move forward in all those areas, but we want to have precision in the way we grow in all of those areas. The way to do it better and more efficiently and just more quickly is to be very precise about what we're trying to do to establish growth, right? So if you're going to dig into it, decide, I'm going to do this much work and this specific work every day to work on getting a facility on an instrument. I'm going to get really nitty-gritty with it. I say that being a person who tends not to have a very structured, disciplined practice routine. I really don't. I never usually have. I've struggled to at times. I've had to work through and sit down and work by rote on stuff, but not to the extent that I wish I had. And I know that I've suffered to some degree. You can have musical growth without doing that. It just won't be as quick. It won't be as efficient. It won't be to the same depth that you probably would like it to be if you want to get somewhere with music. If I'm a pro, thankfully I've had opportunities to really just dig in. Like the year I was in Iraq, I spend a lot with the band, I should say. I spend a lot of time playing, like every day, even with just a practice pad, a gum rubber pad to work sticking out on and things like that. So that was extremely useful. But a buddy of mine and I have been talking recently about wanting to specify a much more dedicated and specific practice routine. To specify a specific, that was kind of redundant. I catch myself after the fact on all these ridiculous things in what I say, because I'm trying to be more precise in my speech. We want to get more out of what we do every day. And one of the tools that has been suggested to us, even by Harold, actually, he told me this, do ninja practice. That's totally his term, he coined it. But he's like, you sneak in for 5 minutes, work on something that you planned to work on specifically for those 5 minutes, then get out, go back to doing what you're doing. Come back for another 5 minutes, sneak in, do it, and get out. Ninja vanish, right? So we're doing those things to get better at what we do, little by little, to try and fit it in the schedules that we already have, which are, pretty packed. But yeah, that's our whole approach to trying to get better. And right now we're working on trying to transcribe, to like listen and then write out portions from particular jazz tunes that are favorites of ours. There's one that was a version of this one that was done by Max Roach and Clifford Brown. Max Roach, one of the greatest jazz drummers of all time. And it's a song called Take the A Train. And I've got an old recording that I picked up a year or two ago of this, and I'm going through that. And there's a section toward the mid to late portion of the song where there's 3 breaks where the band drops out and the drummer, Max Roach, just does what he does. He goes nuts with it. And it's really focused and specific, but it's also spontaneous, So I'm going to sit there and try to listen and then determine specifically what motions he's playing, what drums he's using, what rudiments he's playing, different strokes on the drums and cymbals, and figure out how to reproduce exactly what he's done. So that's our goal, is to try and write out note for note and play note for note what he did on that, and to emulate the greats, because then we add that to our musical library, and we're specifically using that as a tool for growth. We're also going to use playing along with other tunes to get better, right? We're going to take specific songs and say, I'm going to work on playing this song note for note as it is in the recording, at the tempo they're going at, the speed, using the exact pitches or voices in the drums that we can. Of course, there's going to be drummers out there that have kits much larger than mine. I have tom-toms, they're just in the car right now. But really, to really practice stuff, all you need is a ride cymbal, snare drum, bass drum, and hi-hat. You have those 4 elements, and you're good to go. You can get pretty much everything you need to do, because I can use this as a crash cymbal. I can play tom-tom things on my snare drum, all of that. And anyway, let me take a look at the chat, because I haven't looked at that for a little bit. Well, thank you, Blue Sky. I appreciate that. I'm having a blast teaching. She says I'm a good teacher. That was very kind. Hey, Big Drum Bear and everyone else. It's Kodiak. I see Kodiak in there because no soy. Dom, you're awesome, dude. Thanks so much. Give Dom the monies at the PayPal. He's awesome. All right. I have a cowbell. I'm going to pull it out. You've been asking for this for days. It's time. It's just time. Hashtag it's time. Put it on top of my eye right there. There's your cowbell for you right there. How about that? All the times have come. Don't pull this for us, Gene. Sorry, couldn't resist. All right, let's see here. I don't know how lowrider goes. I'm not even going to pretend. I know the song, but again, it's something I'd have to practice and listen to. Well, yeah, exactly. You don't keep you. Good point. You don't get burnt out practicing, because you have to recognize that people have lives. they're a lot busier now than they were 20 years ago. And so the same methods and approaches in teaching are not always effective with every single person. With some they are, but because of devices, I think devices have really played a big part in that. I'm pretty sure there's evidence to demonstrate this. As I understand it, electronic devices stimulate us both aurally and visually, right? So it's a lot of positive stimulation a lot of that time too. So that's a dopamine release, right? We have a higher level of dopamine release into our system than we were normally supposed to have. And we're accustomed to that, right? So for us to pay attention to stuff, for it to be rewarding enough to gain our interest, it has to have enough of a dopamine release for us. And we have to be real careful with this stuff because our whole reward system in our brain is all askew, right? Because of this overexposure to higher dopamine releases. I understand that, and so I try to incorporate that into the way I teach and get the best I can out of my students with modified approaches to practice, modified approaches to digging in. I've had to do it for myself, right? I've had to figure out what is the most important stuff to work on. Do that, like some people have called it the 80-20 rule. Spend 80% of your time working on the most important things you need to work on, right? Like you need to play a song. So play that song, maybe only a little bit, a few times through. Don't play the whole song, 100 times through. Play it a few times through. Stop the song where you have trouble areas and work on those trouble areas, right? Work on the areas where you're not transitioning from one section to another properly, or you played a fill, it was just awkward, played it wrong, you hit the wrong thing. Maybe you figured out, spacing of your instruments was wrong. Anybody that ever played with Legos or Tinker Toys growing up, who remembers Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs, right? I was still all about that as a kid. These things rock. Connects, right? Still got that stuff around a little bit. But drum set is like a grown-up's version, musician's version of Legos and Connects and all the Tinker Toys, all that stuff. You're constantly moving things around, adjusting, getting it just right so that it's your ally. It works for you. And I take that it's your ally bit from one of my favorite drummers, Billy Ward. He talks about that. He has a whole section in his video, Big Time, about making your drum set your ally. It's the first thing he talks about. And he actually shows you how he sets up his drum set, just one or two parts at a time. It's like, first I'll put the bass drum and the hi-hat. That's all I'm going to start with. Just get those things. Then I'll put the snare drum in, right? And Neil Peart did this in his work in progress videos. Set his whole drum kit up from just the bass drum, right? And then worked out from there. So you set those things up, then you add the toms, then you add the cymbals, and everything should work from there, right? You should work everything out from just those simple parts. But a lot of people have their hi-hats, for example, like way out here because they have all these tom-toms they want to go across on. And that's fine and wonderful, except that you have your legs spread way out far like this, it's going to put pressure on your lower back. And when you get to your 40s, you're going to be like, I wish I hadn't done that. So that's no good. So I bring my hi-hat in here, and it's sort of up to the upper left side of my snare drum. And then I play it up here. And it also allows me not to bring my arms in like tight, like here, doing this, Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. I try to get people to avoid that. You're here where you're comfortable, because when you come over here, it's not a big move, right? It's just over here, right? You're right to the ride cymbal and you're good to go. You can crash on pretty much anything you need to. I only use 3 toms, at most right now. I'd be open to using more, but I don't really need to. I can get a lot of the sounds I need out of even like a 3 or 4 piece kit. If I just had, and when I say piece, I'm talking about how many drums. I don't usually include the cymbals in the piece part. But yeah, set up like this, snare drum, bass drum, hi-hat, ride cymbal, maybe a combo, right? You can get most of what you need out of that. So, drumming, I'm talking about it, let's actually do some, right? Simple groove, something like that would be fun to see, right? And it's a little loud in here, I might blow the mic out, we'll see. So, that's a groove I'm working on from time to time. It's more of a pop music groove. Could be a rock groove. Could work there as well. I played it pretty straightforwardly. Played it mostly in time. What I would probably do when I'm practicing is set what they call a metronome. So I'm hearing tempo clicked for me. Specific set tempo that doesn't vary. What I'm doing now probably varies by a click or two here or there. But I've worked with the metronome so often that my tempo tends to stay within a certain range. I don't vary too much. I'm not going to be 20 or 30 clicks off from where I started. That's not going to happen. I might be as much as 5 or even 10 in my worst days, but I'm generally going to stay pretty close to where I originally set that tempo if I don't have a metronome going. But the more I work with it, the more I'm going to be locked right in to know. And it's little details that help me clue in, like the way I hold the stick and it moves in my hands helps me know I'm still in time. That motion right there, that helps me know that I'm still in the tempo. A little loud, probably blurred the microphone out, but that again, I just split the two beats up that I play on the hi-hat between the cowbell and the hi-hat, right? And that motion of just I try to keep that same feel every time, try to keep it consistent, so that helps me know that I'm in time properly. Or it also will help me know how loud or soft I am, right? Like if I've got to bring the motion a little less to keep that same tempo, but also keep the volume low. Right? Simple little things like that. The details, the specific tiny details. You could see me there. I moved further down toward the base of the cowbell, right? And that gave me a softer sound playing it there. I don't want it as loud. I had to change my motion, right? I had to use a different motion instead of it's not like this back or this whipping kind of thing, right? It has to be it's a more fingertip, right? Switching with the fingers. Because I had to get real precise. I could go cross stick on something, and that's always fun. This is one of my favorite rhythms. Yeah, that's actually a little cymbal pattern that gets used in a lot of Rush tunes. Again, some of my favorites, so it's very much in my mind. I was just listening to a famous Rush tune. It's an instrumental called YYZ. They named it YYZ because the opening rhythm goes something like this, like. And they're playing Morse code there. It's the Morse code for Y, right? And then they repeat it. And then the Morse code for Z, right? So it's the identification code for the Toronto airport, right? YYZ. Because all airports have some sort of like 3-letter code. Like Atlanta is ATL, or Los Angeles is LAX. Dallas, Fort Worth is DFW, right? So they have these 3-letter codes for identification that they transmit so that airplanes can pick that up. And I think it used to be done in Morse, it may still be done in Morse in some ways, but that way you know what airport you're getting close to. I don't know for sure, I don't know enough about piloting. But at any rate, they know that that's the 3-letter code for their airport, and that's the Morse for it, so they turn that into a rhythm. It was an instrumental song on their album Moving Pictures from 1981. Mercury Records, Terry Brown producing. Okay, I don't know if it was Terry Brown. I might be wrong on that. But that's a little nerdy. That's how nerdy I am about Rush. It's bad. I actually don't know that much about every single album, just that one, because it was my first Rush album. But I thought you'd enjoy me being a little nerdy, because I can rapid fire nerd about Rush. Anyway, so they're putting those 3 Morse code letters together, right? And then they turn that into an instrumental tune. But there are portions in that song, what was I saying, where they stay at a steady, regular time signature, or what they call 4/4 time. the spacing of music or the organization of beats within a song that is common to most Western pop music. So they stay in that kind of timing throughout most of the song. So what I told my student yesterday, or one of the other students I taught, was to take the basic, simple sticking exercises that build finger strength, play along with some of these songs that are more intricate and exciting. So one of those simple exercises, you're going to do just back and forth, what they call single strokes, right? You just play that along with the song. So I'm humming the melody from YYZ, and then I'm playing along with that. I'm actually, when I'm working on this with him, I'm listening to it from my phone, where I'm actually playing the song back. But it's got consistent tempo, it's got a fun, exciting melody, and you can work on the boring stuff with that. So it's one way to get into the details and get more specific, make the boring detail stuff more fun. At any rate, so I'm going to stop talking about music stuff now. I've done that for a little bit. It's getting close to, it's 9:11. I probably should stop. You guys are cracking me up. All right, because you guys do that a lot. So you guys are talking amongst yourselves, because I'm pretty much going off today. And that's good. We covered a lot of good ground. But here in a few moments, I'm going to go up and read a Bible and pray with my beautiful lady. Oh, and my volume's up. That's not good. I don't want that, because that's going to make things weird. Let's see here. I do want to be able to read what you guys are saying. So, Steve, it's good to see you here. Mama Bear, glad you could join us. Glad everybody came in for today's stream. Let's see. So, what did I miss? Not too much. When I was playing out full time, I lived on my keyboards. Debbie Bear, I'm glad you got in here. Who did I not recognize? I like to recognize all you guys. Rack tom, floor tom, bass drum, and snare. Yeah, man, that's right. That's what you need. Just those 4 parts. I have my toms in the car, I mentioned earlier, in case you missed it. But yeah, I gave you a little drumming today, gave you a little bit of guitar, music theory, which is applicable to keyboards, it's applicable to clarinet, it's applicable to any instrument that's tonal, that's a music, like drums would be considered non-tonal. Although I do tune my drums to specific pitches sometimes and try to play melodies that fit with a tune once in a while. So even that can be tonal, you just have to work harder at it. But why do I like doing this? Why do I like sharing and teaching music? Because your brain, when it starts understanding the system of music, can then process things in a different way. You have a different perspective for looking at everything you encounter in the world. And now you have, as well, different mechanisms for communicating, right? You have a broader range of ideas to use to communicate with people. You can have a different way of problem solving, right? Learning a musical instrument helps create more neural pathways and connections within your brain, and it gets the 2 hemispheres to talk to one another, because you have to be analytical. You have to use your left brain side to figure out how to work out getting better at an instrument, right? To understand the mechanics of it, the theory of it. You have to use your creative side to be musical, right? I am too, Andrew. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate that. I'm glad this party's still rocking. Go over to Steve's stream later today and you'll party like it's 1911. That was a bad musical reference. It's pretty awful. At any rate, I teach this stuff because I want to encourage people to think differently than they normally think, have more tools for thinking so that they can communicate and they can feel like they can deal with their problems in life better, right? You can feel like there's always going to be a solution, or there could be a solution. Mama Bear, good to see you. Glad that you came. Very, very happy to see you here. The more you can think, the more you can grow as a person, right? Because I figure a lot of that has to start in there, right? A lot of that process of growth. I talk about those 4 areas: the mental, physical, spiritual, and relational. And I think, personally, to me, that it starts in the spiritual. It starts with the higher purpose or higher reasoning, right? You have to have a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing. But maybe you can better articulate that purpose if you can think more clearly, right? So they all sort of interplay into each other. It's almost like, where does it really start? Is it chicken or the egg kind of thing? I don't know all the answers to any of that, but it's interesting to ponder, right? And it's interesting to go further along with and encourage other people to be doing that. And if you're spending your time thinking about how you can live better, how you can help other people live better and communicate better, then you're probably going to keep yourself out of more trouble, right? That can't be bad. So there's probably, even if there aren't huge, large scope wins in doing all this, if I don't change the world, I probably do in some small ways, and that's great, right? If I do it for even just a handful of people, even if it's just one person, and their whole outlook on life is changed positively, then that's it for me. That's wonderful. I get super moved when I see, for example, a Doc Peterson interview, and he breaks down a little bit in tears because he's seeing people's lives changed, and they are so excited to tell him about it. It's a little bit, it's almost a little bit emotional for me at times. Because I've seen that happen with some people, at least in small scale, and that's been awesome because it's been a massive validation that what I'm seeking to do in life is what I was called to do. Like it's definitely worth it, Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Anytime someone tells me like they had a breakthrough in some area of music and they're looking at music in a way they couldn't before. Now they can express what's inside them in ways they didn't know how to before. I'm giving them the tools to articulate, maybe not verbally, maybe in other methods that allow them to get out things that maybe words in themselves can't encapsulate. Words are great, and I'm all about the word, obviously. I don't shut up for over an hour, but you guys are willing to listen to. But there's other methods too. There's other areas of expression that are wildly important. And I'm glad I'm doing whatever part I can to help people grab a hold of that. How can you learn some of these things and pass that on to somebody else, right? How can you gain a better understanding of how to express yourself and communicate what's in here, right? Or to better understand what somebody else is trying to communicate with you. Maybe they're not the best at it, but if you've developed better tools for not only expressing but listening, right? Because that's what music is about too. It's that relational aspect of it. Maybe you can learn to help them express what's inside of them more completely, more articulately. And that's awesome. That's super cool. All right. I gotta go. I got a beautiful lady I want to read Bible with and pray with. I think that should suffice for a good live stream. I'm super psyched that y'all came out today. Well, yeah, I should comment on that. Yeah, you think that part of the communication is assuming the other person has good intentions. Yeah. Why do you not have a wrench, Kodiak? I could have sworn I'd given you one. Add moderator. You got a wrench now. You didn't lose it here. It's probably my oversight. We're supposed to be done. At any rate, so it's so funny. I also, yeah, Kika's saying that you have to sort of assume that the other person has good intentions, and they may not, right? Like, you want to hope that they do, but also not be an idiot and be prepared that they don't, because there's plenty of them out there, right? There's plenty of idiots, and so don't be another one by assuming that everybody's lovey-dovey. That's certainly not the case, but it's probably more often the case than it's not, right? yeah, you have to have some openness. It's kind of like where Dr. Peterson, again, I'm going to come back to the 12 rules because it's been relevant to a lot of us that have been listening to it. He says, stand up with your shoulders back. You're exposing yourself, right? It's not like a defensive posture. It's an opening up posture, right? You're showing confidence by exposing your vital areas in that posture, right? And that helps us give a serotonin boost when you do that. You have to be open to the world, to trust a little bit. And that doesn't mean that you're not prepared to defend. Like, you can be right back at it in a moment's notice. You could be right there. But you don't have to live here, right? Because you're going to miss out on a whole lot of stuff. If you're always like, oh, everything's out to get me, everything's going to destroy me, like, that's no good. And you miss all kinds of opportunities. So, at any rate, I'm watching myself like 10 seconds later on the stream. It's kind of funny. I'm going to put this down, and I'm going to go pray with my beautiful lady and read Bible. I love you, Bears. Thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for reposting links and sharing, commenting, all of that kind of stuff on here. Go check me out on Facebook and on Instagram, because I'm going to put fun stuff up there outside of just doing the live streams, other fun, silly things that'll hopefully pick up your day a little bit and encourage you. I love you guys. Go see Dom's stream when he does another one. Go see Mayer's stream. Go see Pinder's stream. Trying to think. Uncensored Christian, if he gets another video going, I'm definitely going to want to check that out. If you haven't seen the latest Crowder video, you can go check that one out. That was fascinating and disturbing all at the same time. A little history on the whole transgender science. And the modern gender theory, the science behind that. Their research team always does a really good job. I'm not saying they're perfect. They probably have errors or they're incomplete in areas, but they give you food for thought and they try to put up good references. And you may have noticed they only put up the reference slides for maybe like a second or two. But if you pause the video, you can go and screen capture that and go read it and check it out. They put it up long enough for you to be able to do that. I think that's the motivation behind that. Not to say, haha, we're not going to show you the sources. No, you have YouTube. You can pause it and get it. But yeah, dig into the sources. Find out more. Learn more about it for yourself. I've wanted to read a number of different books because of their suggestion. And Owen's and Doc Peterson's and other people's suggestions. In fact, I'm reading a book right now. It's called Marx's Daughters. I'm trying to work through there. And it's from the perspective of someone that I think was a fan of socialism, but it looks at this one woman who was a daughter of Karl Marx, or Moses Mordecai Marx Levy was his full name, and two other women that were big movers and shakers in the early days of the communist movement. So that's one to take a look at. I'll bring it with me tomorrow on the stream. Y'all take it easy. See you later, Bears.